Welcome back, Craig here, and today I'm going to talk about why she is a better negotiator than him. And the reason I say that is, in my experience, women tend to be better listeners and questioners than men, especially this guy, and I have spent a bunch of time trying to get better at asking really good strategic questions. We're going to get into very specific advice that you can take, and no matter what, man or woman, if you get better at this, you're going to be better at getting what you want and negotiating what you ask for. Let's get into it. Remember that time in elementary school when the teacher was like, all questions are good questions? Well, I think that's a lie, because not all questions get you where you want to go. If you ask your cousin at Thanksgiving dinner, hey, what happened? Why did you quit your job and give up on life? I mean, that's a question, but probably not going to engender the most familial relationships during your dinner. So how you ask questions is really, really important, and it shades the type of answer you're going to get and where you direct the conversation. Let's talk about 3 different types of questions. The first is open versus closed questions. Then there's specific versus general questions. And then my favorite type, which is called calibrated questions, which it's like listener's judo. It kind of uses their mental resources to serve your purpose and your goal. The difference between open and closed questions is really important, but pretty simple. A closed question usually starts with a verb, and it usually gives the opportunity for them to give like a one-word answer. So if you say, is the launch program the top priority for the team? Then the person can say yes or no. But if you say, what are the top priorities for the team right now? Now you're looking at more of a longer answer where they have to explain their answer to your question. Now, if you say something like, is that okay? I started with a verb, and of course you can get a one-word yes or no answer. But if I say something like, what about this works for you? Now they are going to use their kind of mental resources to think about, okay, well, which parts, and they'll give a long answer. You can think about it kind of like multiple choice or yes or no answers for our quiz, or a long form answer where you have to write a paragraph answer. You always want to tend toward open questions if you can when you're trying to get more information from the other side. Open-ended questions are a great thing to practice just in your everyday life with friends and family, and the reason is because it just allows for better conversation. If you end up in these stop and go kind of conversations where you get short answers from people, just take note of whether you're asking them closed questions or open questions. And as you get better at this, you'll notice that your conversations are a little bit more fluid, and when you get into a negotiation situation, you'll be that much better at getting information from the other side. Let's talk about specific versus general questions. A general question is really easy to come up with. It's things like, can you tell me more about the job? Or what are the priorities for the team right now? These aren't bad questions because they are open, but sometimes a specific question will get the person more into like a anecdote or a story in their head, and then they can roll through their answer a lot easier. You want to think like if it's really easy to come up with generic questions, these broad questions, sometimes they're not the best because they don't really differentiate you or really get at real information. You might get canned answers. So if I ask you something like, instead of, can you tell me more about the job, I ask you, can you walk me through each of the team members and what they're working on right now? Now they're going through like a history in their head and really giving you a story of what's happening with each team member, as opposed to giving you like a canned answer that is almost more like marketing speak. If I want to know more about why they're hiring for this job, I could ask, what are the top priorities of the team? But I could also ask, if I was to join right now today and I actually had, I was fully up to speed on everything on the team, what would you have me focus on in terms of work, like today? Now, that's a very specific question, and I'll get a very specific answer, hopefully, and I can kind of extrapolate, oh, well, this is really the pain point of why they're hiring me. That specific question can be a lot more useful in terms of the information you get than asking a broad question. The last of a question is my favorite. It's called the calibrated question, and the reason is it's kind of like judo. You're using their energy to move the conversation into a place where you want it to go. So you're in the listener's seat, but the way that you use your questions really directs the conversation, and you give them the illusion of control. One example of a calibrated question could be, how do you think I could help the team the most? This is an example of a question you could ask at the end of an interview, and it's interesting because it really gets them down the groove of how what they know about you could help the team the most, and then you have them thinking in that direction. The important part is you don't want to ask them too difficult of a question. You want something where they can have a soft play answer. That way the answer comes to them really quickly, and they're not faced with the question of, well, I can't think of how you could help the team the most. No, instead, you want a really easy question. Where do you think I could help the team the most? And that gets them thinking in that direction. Now, calibrated questions are a specific type of an open-ended question, but instead of the who, what, when, where, why, how, a calibrated question usually only starts with what or how. And the reason is the other ones still don't really elicit the type of answer we want. And if you ask people something that starts with why, it ends up being really accusatory. So we want to stick with what and how as much as possible. Now, here are some examples. Instead of asking, does this look like something that you would like, you can ask, how does this look to you? Or what about this works for you? And those are much more calibrated questions that start with what and how. One of my favorites is, if somebody does something you don't like, instead of asking them, why did you do that, in a somewhat accusatory manner, instead ask them, what caused you to do that? And you can see by that question, it just removes a little bit of the blame directly on them and allows them to be a little bit less defensive in their answer. Some other great calibrated questions are, what about this is important to you? Or, how can I help make this better for us? How would you like me to proceed? Or, what is it that brought us into this situation? How can we solve this problem? Or, what's the real goal here? What are we trying to accomplish? And perhaps my favorite is if they ask you something that you feel is unreasonable or you can't give, just ask them, how am I supposed to do that? And the how you ask that question is really important. It can't be like, how am I supposed to do that? It has to be in a true inquisitive manner so that you can really try to ask them the question, how am I supposed to do that? Calibrated questions are really subtle. Like there's just a couple word differences between what you might ask and then these calibrated questions. I'm gonna put them down in the description so that you can see all of them. Try to just take one of these questions and bring it into your normal daily life. I really think that when you try to bring these concepts into your daily life, that's where you really see the differences, because as opposed to just listening to me talk, you really need to understand and try it out so you can see what the response is compared to what you normally get. Once you start getting used to like incorporating these concepts in your daily life, that's when things really open up and you start to be able to ask things and direct the conversation and really have a listener's control of a conversation, which is just a nicer person to negotiate with. Plus, you'll be getting more and more of what you want. I call this video Why She is a Better Negotiator Than Him. And truly, whether you're a man or woman, whether you're a good listener or a bad listener, very few of us take the time to really think strategically about the types of questions that we ask in life and then how it affects the answers and what we get. It really has a high correlation there, and I hope you get a chance to really try this out. If you like this video, let me know. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what types of videos you want me to do, because I'm hitting this channel up each and every week with a new video. I hope you subscribe. I will see you in the next one.